Stephanie, I know you're a doctor and we're also training to be an Olympian in the modern pentathlon. How did you hold life together in the middle of all that?
Well, it's never easy sort of juggling, a lot of busy things at the same time. I started modern pentathlon when I was a medical student at Oxford University, and at the time I was basically came into the sport really as a rider and a runner, and I'd also done some lightweight rowing prior to that as well. But for me, modern pentathlon just seemed like the sort of ultimate sport. And it was my love of horses really that attracted me into the sport as well. And that coupled with the challenge of trying out two new sports of shooting and fencing that I'd never done before just seemed like, the best challenge ever. So combine that with being a medical student and you've got a pretty full life already.
I can imagine.
But certainly as a student, it's doable. When I actually qualified as a doctor, that was slightly different. I couldn't go and do my sort of running sessions and things, carrying a bleep when I needed to be helping patients as well. So that was really a whole new challenge. And I remember going out to one international competition. Really during the years when I was working and training at the same time. I'm still not. I look back now and I'm still not quite sure how I sort of managed to fit everything in. It was a lot of very early mornings and late nights, I think I was sort of just trying to consolidate the training and so on that I'd done over the previous years. But I remember one competition I got selected to go to an international out in Poland, and I had to sort of rearrange my night shift so that I was actually able to go to the competition. And I literally flew out, sort of finished a night shift, flew straight out to the competition and managed to qualify for the final. And then literally slept virtually solidly for about 36 hours prior to the final, and then came out and managed to come fourth in the final. So
fantastic.
It was always about sort of juggling things.
I bet.
But it's also, if you know that you want to do something enough, you'll always find a way of doing it. And I think for me, God helped to sort of show me how I was able to do these things and sort of give me that energy and give me that focus to be able to do it. To me, being a doctor was as important as my sport, and it was just how do I juggle and combine the two of them really.
And then obviously 2000 you became the very first ever women's pentathlete, modern pentathlete. How did that feel?
Yes, that's right. It was obviously a very exciting time. I'd already decided that I was going to sort of put my medical career on hold for just for a short time. This was before we even knew that women were going to be in the programme in Sydney. But I decided that I had the chance to do pentathlon at that time. I felt that if God had given me the talents to be able to do these things, then I should try and be the best that I could be at them, and and try and sort of do the best that I could for and show what I could do with his talents, and having pentathlon then included for women in Sydney was just fantastic. Men have been competing since 1912, and we actually celebrate the centenary for modern pentathlon this year for being in the Olympic Games. But it was a sport that was created specifically for the Olympic movement by Baron Pierre de Coubertin, who was the founding father of the modern Olympics. And so to actually have women competing alongside men was a very special moment. And I think as we saw yesterday with women's boxing being included for the first time, it's really quite a historic moment. And so it was really in 2000 having women for the first time. And
then you became world champion the year after, and then within 10 days it was all over. Why did you retire?
I'd always, I'd put my medical career on hold for a time to train for Sydney, and it was always my intention to go back to being a doctor. And I think, given the fact I was already a doctor, I knew that the longer I spent out of medicine, the harder it would be to sort of go back to it. And at the end of the day, I'd sort of taken my hobby to the extremes in terms of competing at an Olympics and winning the gold medal. And I'd always intended on sort of going back to medicine after Sydney. And while I was actually competing out in Sydney, I sort of missed the application for the sort of job application deadline for medical jobs sort of starting the beginning of the next year. So I sort of felt this was, this was really sort of my chance to carry on with pentathlon for another season. So I carried on, and actually in 2001 went on to win both the European Championships and the World Championships, and then literally was working back in A&E 10 days later, having in the meantime gone and done some work for one of my charities out in India. Having gold medal brings with it a lot of different opportunities, and I hope that in some small way I've been able to use that in the right way and sort of work with different charities, including sort of the Against Malaria Foundation and Merlin, which provides medical emergency relief work in sort of disaster zones. And so I actually went out to India with Merlin just to help with their work out there. So the contrast between, sort of literally standing on the podium as sort of world champion one week and being in the middle of a sort of an earthquake disaster zone the next was quite a stark contrast. We're going to present these awards in a moment, and I know that the whole Eric Liddell life story had an impact on you. Just comment on that for us. Yes, I mean, throughout my life I've always tried to kind of draw inspiration from a lot of different places, and I think for me, Eric Liddell's story really is just the ultimate in an inspiring story. And I think really what struck me most was just his unwavering faith through everything, and the fact that he basically followed God's plan for his life. He gave up potentially the chance to do well at his sport because of not competing on a Sunday and so on. And I think his story can just be such an inspiration in so many areas, and to then go out to China afterwards and work in a missionary school. And I recently found out that one of my very best friends, her father was actually in the same camp as Eric Liddell, and he said although he remembers him sort of being there, and he remembers just all the amazing work that he did, particularly with children in the camp. And I just keep on hearing sort of more amazing stories about his life, as I go through my own. Fantastic. Steph has to head off sadly, so would you give her a big thank you for her life and for her story? Thank you.